it was waiting. And because I was so scared of the Doctor.
Why?
Because I've seen him. He's like fire and ice and rage. He's like the night and the storm in the heart of the sun. He's ancient and forever. He burns at the center of time and he can see the turn of the universe. And he's wonderful.
Doctor Who. It's almost an insult to say that without a British accent. No offense to all my Brits out there. I'm actually quite a fan of the British accent. Going off script here now, but like seriously. British accents are really cool. Sorry, I'll get back on script. Doctor Who. This show right here. If you guys have seen this show, damn, this is a good show. You guys fucking, this show. I keep going off script. I need to get back on script. It's a show that's existed since televised media became mainstream and has somehow persisted against all odds for 57 years at this point. This show is old, alright? Like, do you guys know how old 57 years is? That is damn old. In fact, the show almost ended at a measly 26 years, which would be, very respectable length for any other fixture of television. The show had sustained poor ratings for a while, so this looked like the end from an outsider's perspective. For 2 decades, the fanbase tried to cobble together some form of the show that could continue. They were not going to let the show rest. And sure enough, it didn't. Doctor Who had defied death. And before long, fans of the show would be rewarded for sticking around with what many would consider to be the golden age of Doctor Who, under the careful guidance of Russell T Davies. It was banger after banger after banger, and then Stephen Moffat came in and it was like... Basically, what I'm getting at here is that all of this is just a drawn-out excuse to talk about Doctor Who. If you'll allow me to be dramatic here, Doctor Who is one of the most influential pieces of media I've ever experienced in my life, with its themes and messages carried with me through every waking breath. It is the single most valuable digital thing in my life. I'm not being hyperbolic, I truly mean that. The show has a terrific and exciting premise dripping with possibilities, terrific and fleshed out characters, strong and creative sci-fi concepts, beautiful directing, superior acting from all of the main cast over the years, with a few special little Dickens for giving particularly noteworthy performances, and themes that are grounded in reality that speaks lengths about good character, doing what's right, and having strong friendships. Today we're going to be exploring all of this, and also why the current era of Doctor Who doesn't work for me, and so many others. So grab a soda, some popcorn, get comfy, because I'm about to shill everything that is Doctor Who. I hope you're ready. Despite living for a good half-century, the very concept of the show still remains relatively unchanged. You should all know this by now, but I'll summarize the general premise to those not in the know for some reason. I mentioned that Doctor Who was cancelled in the late 80s in the prologue. There's a 16-year time gap from what is referred to as the classic era of Doctor Who to the 2005 reboot, which is referred to as the modern era. The two are extremely different in tone, budget, and quality, although the premises are the same, so it's basically the same show, just two different versions of the same narrative. The premise in question goes a little like this. The show is revolved around the protagonist, the Doctor. That's his name, you get used to it. While he may look like a human, don't be fooled, he's actually a Timelord, an alien race from the planet Gallifrey, although it's a spectacular coincidence that the race looks humanoid.
You look human.
You look Timelord.
You look human.
No, you look Timelord. We came first.
Actually, there's one big difference. He has 2 hearts. Yeah, that's right, a binary vascular system. It's pretty cool. Time Lord society can pretty much be divorced from the Doctor entirely, as for most of the modern era, the Doctor is the last of his kind, survivor of what is known as the Time War, a war across time and space that left his home planet a burning cinder.
They're all gone now. My family. My friends. Even that sky. Oh, you should have seen it, that old planet. The second sun would rise in the south and the mountains would shine.
The Doctor spends most of his life on magical space odysseys with his human companions by means of the most iconic vehicle in all of sci-fi, aside from maybe Back to the Future's DeLorean, the TARDIS.
No, this is hard to believe. I know you're not exactly a sci-fi person.
Time and relative dimension in space. TARDIS for short. You're safe in here. You're safe in here and you always will be.
Yeah, it's a time machine. It functions as, you know, how you'd expect a time machine to work, as well as functions as home for the Doctor and his companions. It's a police box that's bigger on the inside, since Time Lords are beyond 3 dimensions, so the TARDIS is essentially as big as your imagination allows, with the console room being the main part of the TARDIS. With these tools, the stage was set for all manner of adventures throughout time and space. Every week was another installment in the ongoing magic tale of the Doctor and his companions, and I think that's the most basic answer for why Doctor Who is so successful. That basic formula channels the inner 9-year-old in all of us, and only succeeds in hooking any actual 9-year-olds for the rest of their natural life, as was I when the young impressionable me sat down to watch Planet of the Dead with my dad. No idea what was to come. But that's for later. Doctor Who is an effective piece of television in many different regards, which is why nowadays, the show is rather legendary, which only serves to boost its titanic iconography and widespread popularity. It's existed for multiple generations, and is the only time you'll be hearing stories from your grandparents about watching the program since its inception back in 1963, during a brand new episode that aired in 2020. In some cases, the show outlives its initial fanbase, some people dying of old age long before the show would even come close to its end, and for many people in this generation, I think none of us will see a proper end to the show in our natural lives, and that's what's so great about it as well. It's a piece of media that exists out of time, much like the main protagonist does, wielding the power of time travel with a nonchalant swagger and unbearable charm. The show just keeps going. The reason for this, aside from the unbeatable formula, is that the show constantly evolves with each decade, and that's obvious when one takes a crash course in the show. Every couple of years there's a new companion, a new TARDIS, new enemies, and yes, of course, a new Doctor. Another relic of Doctor Who's brilliance as a show that effectively made the show immortal with ease is the fact that the Doctor can regenerate. The origin for such a concept is such a well-known story at this point, it feels silly to even mention it, but for the sake of consistency, here we go. The first Doctor, and then only Doctor, played by William Hartnell, was originally hard to convince when signing on for the show all those decades ago, but once he was on for life. He fell in love with the program despite his declining health conditions. Nevertheless, the illness did impede the production of the show heavily. Of course, this would not be a permanent fixture. Doctor Who was in the prime of its life with millions of fans. It was here that regeneration was conceived, and is brilliantly realized through 2013's An Adventure in Space and Time, which I love to bits, and what I consider to be the real 50th anniversary special. Regeneration successfully became a staple of the show, and simultaneously posed as a metaphor for how it's existed for so damn long. The show literally becomes something else while still containing that unbeatable formula that started it all. If one became tired of a certain format of the show, all one had to do was wait a few years, and the show would shed its skin and become a brand new Doctor Who narrative with its own unique display of likable characters, realized worlds, and creative sci-fi concepts to bring in children and adults alike. Other additions to the Doctor's roster of tools was the sonic screwdriver, introduced in the second Doctor's last adventure. Back then, all it did was unscrew a screw, but as time has gone on, it's evolved into a master key for any door in the universe, aside from deadlock sealed ones, of course.
I thought the sonic screwdriver could open anything.
Anything except a deadlock sealed.
and then became a magic wand that could scan people and pick up energy readings. Thanks, Chris Chibnall, for that amazing new use for the sonic screwdriver. Also a new addition with the modern series was the psychic paper.
Look, there, you see, it's fine. You see? The Doctor +1. I'm the Doctor. This is Rose Tyler. She's my +1. Is that all right?
It's essentially a little slip of paper that shows people whatever the Doctor wants them to see, as well as receives messages like a smartphone.
The paper's slightly psychic. Shows them whatever I want them to see. Saves a lot of time.
These tools only serve to complement the unbeatable formula and mold to whatever the plot needs. And malleable tools are perfect for a show that's constantly in a state of flux. However, it's not just the demographic that makes the show so popular. It's not all numbers and values on a spreadsheet in order to make a satisfying compound of explosive television. Although those elements are present, we have to inject a little of that Doctor Who magic that I talked about. Like I said, it's an extremely complex show. There isn't anything quite like it. Therefore, we're going to have to dig a little deeper. Okay, I'm about to lay down some pretty heavy news. You guys ready? Here it is. I'm not including Classic Who in this video. I know, I'm upset too. But I'll tell you what, I've actually seen a lot and love it to death, which is more than most modern Who fans can say. But it's a long process. I haven't seen nearly enough to talk about it at length, nor is there a lot for me to love about it on an analysis level. I'm someone who prefers a more cinematic format of television because I love directing. The camera is a character, and Classic Who doesn't really acknowledge that to a high degree. Comparatively, modern Who not only understands that the camera's a character, but treat it as the main protagonist, especially Rachel Talalay. Plus, she directed Heaven Sent, which is the best episode of Doctor Who. Okay, I'm gonna stop now before I dedicate an additional 50 pages exclusively to Heaven Sent. But if you want a comprehensive video series all about both classic and modern Who, I cannot recommend Clever Dick Films enough. I watched his series countless times during quarantine, and what's spectacular about his stuff is he gets no AdSense from it. The man does it all without a penny in return. What a hero. I'm not on his payroll, by the way, and I genuinely like his stuff. You should go watch it. But for this one, we're only doing modern, for the most part. It's the show that I fell in love with and have a concrete scientific understanding of. I've rewatched it and cherished it at least 100 times in my 17 years on this planet, and that's being generous. I've probably watched Heaven Sent more times than anyone could ever be able to count. God, I love Capaldi. So, where to start? How about here? I think the Doctor is the most complex, brilliantly written character in all of cinema, and I am 100% taking into account that I love Heaven Sent more than anything on this earth. Yes, I've seen Walter White. Yes, I've seen Gus Fring. Yes, I've seen Saul Goodman. Basically all the cast of Breaking Bad contend for the best written character in TV. But for me, none of them come close to the Doctor. For one thing, he's not even human. To write a convincing alien that's also charming, funny, smart, and threatening in a way that also doesn't impede on the fact that he has no grasp of human life is legitimately impossible, 50 years of character building aside. The Doctor is the perfect foil to humanity.
Why'd you put up with us then?
In amongst 7 billion is someone like you. That's why I put up with the rest of them.
Of course, it takes an alien to show us the beauty of being human. Those little things about life we grow to appreciate is what the Doctor loves about our species. Our complexion, our empathy, our passion, all are put under a microscopic lens when the Doctor is present. Because he's a foil in that regard, we connect to him more because of his affection toward us. That dynamic brings alien and human closer and closer to the point where a line is barely visible between the two.
Those people down there, they're never small to me. Don't make assumptions about how far I will go to protect them because I've already come a very long way. And unlike you, I do not expect to reach the promised land.
He's protective over humanity and its purity because his own race was A, corrupt with total power, and B, completely extinct. So at a certain point, you forget that the Doctor even is an alien. That bondage and development through a script is the beauty of subtext, and Doctor Who is dripping with it. In terms of character for the Doctor, he's almost entirely defined by his moral compass, and boy is it a brilliant one. The Doctor is a genius who's traveled the world for centuries untold, and is as old as the universe itself.
4.5 billion years.
He's learned a lot and wants to bestow his wisdom to humanity and his power and authority to all evils of the universe. The Doctor himself is pretty much a myth, with most of the modern series having the Time Lords be extinct. The Doctor is alone.
I'm very, very scared.
And because the scripts can treat the Doctor like an adult, sometimes the pressure of that responsibility can crumble, and it's clear that the Doctor still has lessons to be learned and can still destroy himself should he take the wrong path. Case in point, The Waters of Mars, my second favorite Doctor Who episode, and is every bit as genius as Heaven Sent. The Doctor's never static like the show would like you to believe. He is constantly challenged by his enemies, and time again, prevails through his courage and determination to always do what's right. The human race has a lot to learn from the Doctor, both on the show and in real life. When you have 50 years of canon to muddle through, it takes a lifetime to understand the character, let alone take him to new depths, which is why I love Stephen Moffat so much as a Doctor Who writer, for the simple reason that he understands the Doctor so much, and to have the wombo combo of Best Doctor Writer and Best Doctor Actor of Capaldi and Moffat is another reason I love Heaven Sent so much. And even though we have all-time highs in Heaven Sent, and essentially Capaldi in general, every single version of the Doctor is brilliant in their own way. I have never seen a more subjective opinion in my life that can hold a candle to a favorite Doctor ranking list. As far as I'm concerned, every incarnation of the Doctor is good. Even Colin Baker, who was the Doctor during the show's most strenuous time period, I actually like. Even though he strangled his companion and is also super rude and stuff, I think he's unbearably funny.
We'll pile the heads of our enemies before us like melons in a heap. I would enjoy that. What? I like.
He's not near my favorite, of course, but I do not think any particular incarnation of the Doctor is even close to bad. Hell, even John Hurt, a man who was only the Doctor in one episode, is incredible.
They are the Doctor.
You're the Doctor too.
No. Great men are forged in fire. It is the privilege of lesser men to light the flame. Go back to your lives. Go and be the Doctor that I could never be. Make it worthwhile.
How can you people not love this incarnation? Hey, tell you what. Just for fun, let's rank them right now. When else am I gonna have the chance? Just throwing that out there. Have fun in the comments. Also, if you've already forgotten, I haven't seen any of the classic Doctors in their entirety. The closest I've gotten is Tom Baker at a season and a half. Anyways, back to the writing of the show. Aside from the Doctor, companions and recurring characters get the same level of intimacy as the Doctor. Because the show throws out everything every so often and starts over, one would expect some characters to be a little weak in some areas, but for the most part, no. Although I don't like Rose Tyler nearly as much as the average David Tennant fangirl, most companions I would say function very well as realized characters. And king amongst them all is the Lord and Savior himself, Bernard Cribbins, who plays Wilfred Mott. God, this man is so perfect in every way. I think everyone is lying to themselves by not putting this man at number 1 on every companion ranking list. I think the time we spend with Wilf in the End of Time parts goes hand in hand with how we all perceive him with unrequited love. Hearing stories about his life during the Second World War, how he never took a life, how scared he was to pull the gun on the Master. Not to say we didn't love Wilf before that. I mean, who could forget these classic Wilf moments?
There's keen eyes up there, and they're watching us, and they're not friendly.
Dad, take those things off.
No, I shan't. It's Christmas. It's gone dark. It's them aliens. I'll bet my pension. What do you want this time, you green swine?
Dad.
Look, you get back inside, Sylvia. They always want the women.
Dad, please come home. They're leaving our street alone.
Yeah, I've got a weapon.
It's a paint gun.
Exactly. Them Dalek things, they've only got one eye. A good splodge of paint, they'd be blinded.
You're welcome with me.
Will I, Eck?
Wilf represents the best of humanity, and is everything the Doctor values in a human. He's the only supporting character that loves the fact that Donna gets the opportunity to travel in time. He respects the Doctor and cares for him as if he was his own son, which is obviously spelled out in Tennant's last episode. We see Wilf cry a lot, and we connect with him more than any other character, I feel, because we see everything about him, and it is so damn real. That's what good character work can do. Wilf is kind of a benchmark for most characters in the show. While I may not love, say, Martha to death like I do Wilf, for the most part, all companions are compelling in their own way. Each feel like real people, and that is what you really try to strive for in character writing. Creating a comprehensive character with a life outside of what we see on the show, and creating interesting drama around it is essentially the template for drama in Doctor Who, and for the most part, TV in general. Making character traits, character flaws, linking them together in a real way, and building on them. It's truly a treat to see a character evolve into something greater and progress through a show. And most, if not all, main characters in Doctor Who have this. Rose is empathetic with 9 before becoming obsessive over the Doctor with 10, which is something that I don't care for, but hey, it's growth and decay.
I'm not leaving it. I'm not going without her.
Oh my God, we're going.
I've had 20 years without you, so button it. I'm not leaving her. You've got to. Well, that's tough.
Okay, I'm watching the footage back for this part of the video, and I can't help but... Jackie is right. She is right here. Jackie Tyler, Mother of the Year. I don't care what anybody says. She is like one of the best characters in this show. She does not deserve Rose as a daughter. I'm sorry, I try not to be like offensive, but seriously, I really don't like Rose in Series 2. Martha hardens with her adventures in the TARDIS, so by the finale, she can have the courage to travel the world and save the day. Then in Series 4, she joins UNIT. It makes sense. Donna is ungrateful and annoying when we first see her, until she learns to appreciate things more and empathize with people. She actively challenges 10, which is so refreshing after 2 seasons of companions making googly eyes at Tennant, Jack included. And then by the finale, she's hardly the character we first met in The Runaway Bride, which makes it all the more tragic when she loses her memories and regresses as a character back to square one. Amy is the same. Scared young adult whisked away by her imaginary friend, turned into a loving mother in a stable marriage, independent of the Doctor. Clara, well, Clara's kind of weird. Her progression in Season 7 and 8 is essentially getting over the regeneration, and in 9 we get something a little better in that she gets too cocky and confident in her ability to mirror the Doctor, something that we got a lot of taste of in past series. And finally, Bill learns about the universe and learns to hold on to who she is, especially in the Monk trilogy, which comes back again in the finale. The writing, character writing specifically, is hardly ever compromised. All dialogue feels natural and believable for both every incarnation of the Doctor and every companion. There's always a golden rule I've kept when I watch a film, or anything really. A piece of media is at its best when it leaves you with a lasting impact. That doesn't mean something has to necessarily be political or educational to leave a lasting impact. In fact, my favorite kind of lasting impact is getting absorbed in a world and its characters because the conflicts they face are relatable, believable, or compelling. Consistency is key, but my actual favorite lasting impact is a subcategory of a fleshed out world, and I've already mentioned it. Subtext. For example, let's take 2 amazing games, Half-Life 2 and The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Both are incredible games, with incredible worlds and unmatched storytelling. I mean, there's a reason these two are the most talked about games when it comes to the best games of all time. However, the reason Half-Life 2 is at number 7 on my top 10 favorite games, and Ocarina of Time is at number 1, is subtext. Half-Life 2 succeeds in storytelling by having a realized apocalyptic world with good characters and perfect pacing. Ocarina of Time succeeds in having a story about childhood that slowly evolves into a story about growing up and coming of age. The horrors of adolescence versus the wonder of childhood. There's a reason poetic dialogue is plastered all over this game. Stuff like, the flow of time is always cruel, a childish mind will turn to noble ambition, memories of younger days. The story follows maturity in a way that meshes perfectly with its realized world, puzzle solving, compelling narratives, and dynamic gameplay to successfully solidify it as the best story in video games, in my opinion. That shouldn't take anything away from Half-Life's incredible world. I mean, the game speaks for itself. It's just that I connect with a malleable subtext a bit more than a really, really solid world. I like Half-Life, by the way. If you weren't picking up where I'm going with this, Doctor Who is subtext central, which makes its overarching narrative something I always come crawling back to. Because the character of the Doctor is so 12-dimensional, a story that he inhabits has like 144 dimensions. There are so many good Doctor Who stories, but we're gonna zero in on two masterpieces here, and I've already mentioned both of them. Heaven Sent and The Waters of Mars. Let's save the best for last, shall we? In this episode, we get treated to something extremely unique, and the fact that the Doctor kind of loses it a little in this episode. Yeah, just a little. Okay, jokes aside, this script is so damn grown up. I cannot applaud these writers enough for this shit. In a Doctor Who Confidential interview, David Tennant said something that made me value this episode leagues more.
What's exciting about a story like this is that with a series which is ongoing and a character who must be essentially unchanging, is that there's a limit to what you can do with that character. You know, he kind of pretty much always has to win the day and pretty much always has to be reset to zero at the end of every story. And we're in the sort of unique position now because we know that the 10th Doctor story is coming to an end, where we can start being a little bolder with that. We can start telling stories about this character that you can only tell once.
This story is a one-time thing. We will never see something like this again from the Doctor. It can only ever happen at the tail end of the story. All this build-up, all this tension the Doctor endures, this is the climax of all of that, and comes at a very logical time in the narrative. So what's the gist here? The Doctor lands on Mars in the near future and gets tangled up in the affairs of the first outer space colonists ever. Obviously these people are very famous and the Doctor knows who they are, but the audience doesn't. The audience should be like, oh, why do I care? But the world building and writing specifically puts these characters at the center of a huge domino effect, so before long, the audience knows how important these characters are to the future of humanity. We understand the stakes. Then, the deadlock seal in this whole fiasco is the Doctor's comment here.
I'm sorry with all of my heart, but it's one of those very rare times when I've got no choice.
This is a fixed point in time. We saw this previously in the fires of Pompeii. These people die today, and that is just how it is. Nothing can be done. Anyway, more hijinks ensue, and the Flood appear and start killing people. The doomsday clock is ticking at this point. The Doctor continues talking himself into sticking around, despite the circumstances throughout the episode, because he loves these people, and can't bring himself to abandon them at the end of their lives. Fast forward a bit more, and the crew discover the Flood, and decide to flee the Mars base with their lives. Now that the Doctor's use has been expired, Captain Brooke finally releases him. And freeze. This moment is so powerful. The Doctor is so torn inside. He watches the crew panic to escape frozen, desperately wanting to act. Tennant's acting, damn. And yes, this is acting, just standing there. This is incredible. The audience kinda expects him to try and do something, but he doesn't, and this is a logical character progression for 10.
Anything I do makes it happen.
We see that in the fires of Pompeii, so he expects that if he does interfere, all that would lead to is more anguish. He has no choice but to walk away. Damn. Then the second climax. Brick confronts the Doctor in the airlock. He has no choice but to tell her their fate with a heavy heart. This is where I really get a chance to look at the thick skin of this cast. There's a line from Roman later in the episode, once they started evacuating, that really gets me.
Roman, on your feet.
But we came all this way.
But we came all this way. This poor kid. These characters are passionate about what they do. They wanted this not for others, but for themselves. This is important to them. Even in overwhelming odds, this team wants this experience. This is invaluable to them. They overcame trials and tribulations to get here, and it's being taken away by sheer circumstance. But by far the strongest character here is Miss Brooke herself. She is what this episode basically revolves around. At the start of the episode, we sympathize with the Doctor's dilemma, but as the episode goes on, she becomes the voice of reason. A well-realized character that still has a fear of dying, which is incredibly sensible given the situation. She reacts very realistically, but ultimately understands that if there is something to be done, he would have done it, and releases him. Then the build-up. The Doctor hikes back to the TARDIS, still tapped into the crew comms. He's forced to listen to their dying screams like nails on a chalkboard. If he was going to do something, it's already too late. Steffi gets cornered in a room, Roman is killed by a stray water droplet, and Ed gets infected while attempting escape in the rocket. He's forced to commit suicide in order to stop the Flood's plans of hijacking the rocket. It's a heroic sacrifice on Ed's part, with one last good deed to save the Earth. Upon rocket detonation, the Doctor is knocked to his feet. He turns around, fire engulfs his surroundings, and he goes back and... Wait, what? He's going back? But this is a fixed point. Can he even save them? What'll happen? Can he even pull it off? What is going on? This is amazing! Like I showed in the intro, the Doctor has utterly had enough with this fixed point BS he's had to put up with. The Time Lords are dead. Why should he? This is truly a selfish moment for the Doctor, but is totally earned after being completely responsible for his whole life. It doesn't make him right, but it is an earned character moment. Then all of a sudden, Brooke activates Action 5 and is going to nuke the whole base for the sake of time. Someone has to stop the Doctor from destroying the whole of reality, and she'll do whatever it takes to ensure that he will be stopped. He barely does it and puts his own life on the line, but manages to save what little survivors there were.
You've seen him fighting evil and vanquishing time back on Mars. When he arrives on Earth, it's a different man. There's an arrogance about him. There's a superiority about him. He is superior in many ways. He's not. In many ways, he's just becoming what he could be.
Isn't anyone going to thank me?
So you see him almost looking at the humans with contempt, and almost enjoying the fact that he's more learned than them. He's got more knowledge, and loving the fact that he's rewritten history.
Don't you get it? This is the 21st of November 2059. Same day on Earth.
So he's in a very, very dangerous path there as he steps out of that TARDIS, because he's becoming omnipotent, and that's not good.
No one should have that much power.
Tough.
That's how I imagine someone like the Master became the Master, was by taking all the power a Time Lord has and using it and exaggerating it until there's no going back.
The Time Lord victorious.
And there's no one to stop you.
And where that might lead is almost impossible to quantify. I mean, if he's willing to do this, then what's to stop him going back into the Time War? What's to stop him going back and filling Donna's mind again? What's to stop him going back and making sure Rose never goes into the alternative universe? There's so many things open to him now. He's literally ripping time apart.
Suddenly, this Time Lord Victorious becomes this terrifying figure. Adelaide can see it because she's watched the Doctor throughout the story.
Eventually, Adelaide realizes she's being forced to act. The Doctor right now is truly unstoppable. I mean, think about it. Through one final attempt to spite the Doctor and snap him back into it, she kills herself in her home. And jeez, the editing here is perfect. Graham Harper really knows how to sell this repeating moment stuff to make this impact last, and the music as well. The impact hits the Doctor right between the eyes, and he realizes that what he's done and led to is truly terrible. That someone had to kill themselves just to crack his arrogance. He learns the most valuable lesson. With great power comes great responsibility, despite the circumstances. It is absolutely brilliant and is a whole new low for the character. There will never be another Doctor Who episode like this. Before we start, I think that it's important to point this out. Heaven Sent is so much of a fucking masterpiece that it has its own separate track listing in the Series 9 soundtrack, separate from both the rest of Series 9 and the finale Hellbent. That alone should tell you all that you need to know. Listen, I could sit here and tell you why Heaven Sent is my favorite episode. I could just praise the music, the cinematography, the directing, the writing, the acting, the subtext, the themes, the set design. I could just praise and praise until the sun goes down. So the episode opens with a monologue from Peter Capaldi. As you'll quickly realize, this monologue actually continues for the full 45 minutes and doesn't end until the end fucking credits. So, if you wanted the high concept box ticked on a Doctor Who episode, don't worry, Heaven Sent's got you covered. For this first chunk of Capaldi's episode-long monologue, he speaks about some mysterious thing that follows you until you die.
You will run. It will walk. You will rest. It will not. One day, you will linger in the same place too long. You will sit too still or sleep too deep. And when, too late, you rise to go, you will notice a second shadow next to yours. Your life will then be over.
Immediately, there are 3 different interpretations for what this thing could be, and only one of them is spelled out. These 3 interpretations are the Vale, the creature that attacks the Doctor throughout the episode, the Doctor himself as he declares during the cold open transition to title card,
I am the Doctor. I'm coming to find you, and I will never, ever stop.
And the final and more hidden answer is that this nameless thing is death itself. This catapults us into the themes and subtext running throughout the episode. The Doctor is trapped in a castle with mysterious properties, whilst a creature tracks his every move, never faltering. Conflict with the enemy is inevitable, and should the Doctor hope to survive an encounter with the Vale, the only way to stop it is to confess his secrets, a true challenge for a character like the Doctor, deeply entrenched in mystery. The Doctor must use his intellect and wit to figure out a way to escape, all the while operating in the wake of the death of Clara. There are several reasons to watch this episode. The beautiful cinematography, like seriously, it's beautiful. Capaldi's terrific acting.
Sorry I'm late. Jumped out of a window.
The great sci-fi concept, its place in the Series 9 narrative as the penultimate episode. But what I want to cover are its themes, because in a way, it's the most important part of any work of cinema that is trying to strive for something. Themes are the roots of cinema. Heaven Sent's theme is death, or more specifically, dealing with a traumatic death. Because this episode happens directly after Face the Raven, a story where Clara dies at the hands of the Raven after overstepping her capabilities and trying to be like the Doctor, there are many thematic ripples that seep into the story, chief among them, the sorrow and grief that occurs in the immediate impact of a terrible tragedy, and the story holds no punches in portraying the devastating traumatic event that it is. This story in general is one big metaphor, which takes moments that work on their own as a terrific message about loss on top of being strong Doctor Who stuff, most notably the climax of the story. The Doctor realizes that in order to escape the castle without confessing about the hybrid, will force him to use the teleporter to revive a copy of himself over and over until he can slowly but surely chip away the Spantium wall. The subtext in this instance is that the Doctor chipping at the wall is how the process of grief feels. Repeating the same actions, trapped in a cycle, trying to move on when it feels so impossible. with the spantium symbolizing moving on, freedom from the cycle. The castle itself being described as a torture chamber also doubles on how life can feel like torture when in deep anguish. And there's only one real moment when the script straight up addresses this theme, and this moment is, surprise surprise, amazing. Firstly, a moment where the Doctor actually breaks down, after keeping up a facade of bloodthirsty vengeance on the outside in his dedication to escape the castle. When in the comfort of his storeroom, or his mind palace, so to speak, he has to face up with something. Even if he escapes this challenge, even if he gets out and defeats the Vale, Clara is still dead.
And you'll still become whatever I do. You still won't be there.
So good. We've had tons of scenes of the Doctor crying, and damn it, this is the best one. Mainly because it shows that a performance doesn't have to match the intensity of the emotion. This quiet crying, Capaldi falling down and resting his hands on his face, showing his frustration and feeling the way he does, it, yet again, is another example of Capaldi's terrific acting. Then the Doctor gets his closure. Clara appears and tells him to move on, that life continues and he has to win.
You are not the only person who ever lost someone. It's the story of everybody. Get over it. Beat it. Break free.
Clara appearing here obviously symbolizes the moment that you free yourself from the grief of a loss, and decide that it's time to move on, which is obviously so much harder than it sounds, which is why the following sequence is breaking the wall. Because moving on is such a long process, and takes a lot of strength and dedication, when you lose someone, it's very much like a chunk of your life is just gone. It takes a long time to fill that hole with something else, and sometimes it can feel like billions of years, like the Doctor had to go through. And the final reason this episode is my favorite piece of cinema ever is that this episode's themes applied very truthfully pretty recently. A friend of mine passed away about a year ago to suicide, and the emotional fallout was devastating. Before I go on, I have to mention that I personally have come to terms with his loss. But yeah, it was really fucking hard. He was one of my closest friends. He was in a lot of my videos along with my other friends. We played games together and talked nearly every day. Our little 4-man crew had hangouts every week for a whole year at one point. When the news broke, the devastation that was life for a while was truly intolerable at times. The ramifications that his passing left in our social circle had caused irreversible damage, and for a long time it felt like things could never be the same again. During this time period, the only place I could find solitude was in Doctor Who, and during this period, Heaven Sent helped me find my closure and realize that the memory of him wouldn't always be a sad one. To this day, I've never resonated with a piece of drama in the same way, and Heaven Sent, and at large Doctor Who, in general, will forever be seared onto my hearts. There are tons of tinier moments I could focus on, like the incredible twists and build-ups we've been treated to over the past couple seasons. The totally inspired alien designs that are equal parts terrifying and equal parts amazing. This incredible twist that we got in the End of Time Part 2 that Wilf was the one that knocked 4 times. I mean, seriously, you cannot tell me that when you watched this scene for the first time you saw this one coming. It is one of the best twists in any show or movie ever, and the following character-fueled speech from Ten, slowly but surely talking himself into saving Wilf. Listen, for those who think this scene is out of character for Ten, I think it's imperative to know that he was never for a second going to leave Wilf for dead. Hell, any random human that may be trapped in there. This moment is just him letting his rage out before finally deciding it's time. It's purely and simply 100% Doctor Who, and it is great. In summary, plot points and arcs are tightly woven and keep you engaged. Standalone stories have interesting sci-fi concepts that are endlessly engaging, sometimes, and constantly keep me coming back, and also Heaven Sent is the most well-written episode I've ever had the privilege of watching. Okay, moving on. If you don't know, I am an artist. To be honest, I've covered so much in this video, I don't know if I've mentioned it yet, but despite the sake of being redundant, yes, I'm an artist. Mostly self-taught, but I took a brief private course during 8th grade, and of course my school art classes, but the rest is all me. I've drawn my whole life, and I could never commit to keeping it all hidden in some page behind a sketchbook. not for the stuff I was really proud of. So if it couldn't be in my sketchbook and had to be put up and posted somewhere, where would it go? The only thing that made sense to me was to decorate my walls with my art. And I gotta be honest, after doing it for 2 years, my walls are pretty amazing. I'll probably put up some footage here, but it's really incredible. It gets less incredible when you look at it all day, but sometimes I'll look up and be like, damn, I made all this. The crowning jewel being this little section here, my Doctor Who collection. 12 of my all-time favorite shots in Doctor Who, hand-drawn with blood, sweat, and tears, by me. Each one is my best work yet, but that's only because the source material is beautiful on its own right.
So, let's talk about you then. What are you interested in?
Oh, look around. Art. Look at the sky. It's not dark and black and without character. The black is in fact deep blue. And over there, lighter blue. And blowing through the blueness and the blackness, the wind swirling through the air. And then shining, burning, bursting through the stars. Can you see how they roll their light? Everywhere we look, complex magic of nature blazes before our eyes.
And that's when I realized, I don't want to be a visual artist. I want to be a film artist. So much so that it's my go-to degree when I go off to college next year. You learn a lot about making a great composition from visual arts. Still lifes, posing, portraits, all that jazz. You'd be surprised how synonymous art is. Cinematography is pretty much visual art, but the actors, props, and the sets are the subject matter, and the camera is your canvas. The one thing that Doctor Who masters in terms of cinematography is flair, grandiosity. When you're dealing with a science fiction like Doctor Who, these shots can't be boring. You can see what happens when shit goes the wrong direction with Series 11 and 12, and I'll get to that proverbial dumpster fire in just a little bit, but man, when this show aired, people said that this show was so damn beautiful, but I couldn't agree less. The shots are so desaturated. The show is obsessed with lighting these scenes with the color orange. Sometimes I can see one shot or set that makes me think, huh, that's cool. But when we compare it to what came before, is this really an upgrade? No, seriously. Take a look at my top 10 favorite shots from Doctor Who Series 1 through 10. Look at that. Look how magical all those were. Most shows are so obsessed with making these shots grounded and realistic, but Doctor Who has always had a flair for the dramatics, and hey, I hear this all the time that modern Who is some over-dramatic soap opera now from classic Who fans. Guys, the show is a drama, and quite frankly, I'd like to keep it that way. The show is much more dazzling, which, I gotta be honest, is never a bad thing as far as I'm aware. It's like Hitchcock said, drama is life, with the dull bits cut out. I can't think of anything that describes Doctor Who better. Life, but with the dull bits cut out. Like I've mentioned, Doctor Who is a show that admittedly had some areas of weak polish over the years, but with a core spirit that is undying until recent years. With that being said, one would expect some weak performances for a show that essentially hires every actor who ever touched British media, but that is unequivocally untrue. Because Doctor Who is such a British legend, if you get invited onto Doctor Who, you better make that the performance of a lifetime, and for the most part, that has remained true. Until recent years. The Doctor Who that I love, series 1 through 10, never had a weak performance, especially in the main cast for each season. Chris Eccleston, Billy, Tennant, Freema, Catherine, Barrowman, Smith, Karen, and Arthur and Alex, Jenna and Capaldi, and Pearl all give no weak performances. In some instances, Peter Capaldi, the performance literally changes my life and inspires me to love film again, because seriously, Peter is a perfect actor, and the fact that we got him in Doctor Who is a gift I hope the world never forgets.
I'm not on the phone, I'm right here. Standing in front of you. Please, just see me.
So we're going to zero in on my two favorite performances in the show and what makes them work. David Tennant and Peter Capaldi. First, let's be upfront. This role was a dream for both actors we're focusing on. Both are lifelong Doctor Who fans, with Tennant going into the acting world solely with the dream of getting such a role. So when he finally got it, he wasn't going to slander that chance in any way. Tennant is a large part of why people love the RTD era of Doctor Who, and no, it's not because he's hot. At least I hope. Tennant's version of the Doctor is markedly more human than his predecessors. He responds to human emotions in a real way. He comforts them, reassures them.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's not a quality that I particularly love in the Doctor per se, but it's the man's take, and it's definitely not bad, just different. Because of the human writing, it's easy to be drawn to him as a leader and friend, someone to confide in and trust, and Tennant's performance certainly mirrors that. He's sweet, charming, funny, and intelligent, but takes the time to make sure people understand, which some doctors don't even consider, rattling off 1,000,000 words a minute without pacing oneself. Of course, a performance so one-note couldn't be this memorable, so there's an aura of mystery, intensity, rage, which is something that Eccleston forged and Tennant owned. His Doctor is more vicious, intense, unforgiving, and he even says as much in his first episode.
No second chances. I'm that sort of a man.
There's some sorrowness to his progression as the Doctor, once a baffling and joyous pair when in the company of Billie Piper's Rose, but now alone and hurt. But that's just a part of Time Lord existence. You lose everyone you love when one is immortal, and that melancholy is perfected nowhere else than in Tennant, and I find myself revisiting his Doctor to see that side once again. It truly is the performance of the lifetime. And then Capaldi.
Every war ever fought right there in front of you. Because it's always the same. When you fire that first shot, no matter how right you feel, you have no idea who's going to die. You don't know whose children are going to scream and burn. How many hearts will be broken? How many lives shattered? How much blood will spill until everybody does what they were always going to have to do from the very beginning? Sit down and talk!
Now, I've made no secret in this video at this point that Peter Capaldi is my favorite Doctor. But he's actually also my favorite actor ever, and I've never seen him in anything else other than in Doctor Who, which is why I'm so excited for James Gunn's Suicide Squad, not just because James Gunn is one of my favorite directors and directed 2 of my favorite Marvel movies, But Capaldi is also a part of the main cast, and I can't wait to see him tackle another character. But back to Doctor Who. Peter Capaldi's Doctor is the single focus of his series that he's in. His character gets a laser-focused progression from season to season, and his arc into one of the best Doctors ever is a sight to behold, and one of my most memorable experiences from watching a TV show. There's a brilliant video on YouTube called 24 Minutes of Peter Capaldi Acting or something like that, and it's a compilation of all his greatest hits in Doctor Who, and I'll be sure to link it below to get his arc in Doctor Who essentially in fast forward. Although if you want to see the whole thing, I gotta recommend subscribing to HBO Max and watching his tenure for yourself. Peter Capaldi was not just a childhood Doctor Who fan, but a lifelong Doctor Who fan, and it is unbearably poetic that the man finally got his role and stomped all his predecessors as far as I'm concerned.
People always ask me, what is it about the show that appeals so broadly? The answer I would like to give, and which I'm discouraged from giving because it is not useful in the promotion of a brand, is that it's about death. And it has a very, very powerful death motif in it, which is that the central character dies. Doctor. And I think that is one of its most potent mysteries, because somewhere in that, people see that that's what happens in life. You have loved ones, and then they go. But you must carry on.
Peter's arc is perfect. He starts unsure of who he is, as this is a brand new regeneration cycle for him. We get the sense that the Doctor knows what to do, but he doesn't know if that's him. He's confused on who he is, and if that wasn't bad enough, the one relationship that's lingered through regenerations, that one being with Clara, is extremely fraught. We get that the Doctor is desperate to find himself, and be who he knows he has to be again. His series ends with his Doctor learning his lesson, and learning to be himself. He loosens up and injects more personality and fun into himself. That is, until things get dark and reckless, and Clara dies. The Doctor becomes furious with the Time Lord to inadvertently cause Clara's death, which is obviously her fault, but the Doctor is foolish and blinded by rage. He destroys himself and breaks all his own rules, becoming the hybrid. By the way, this part isn't in the script, but I kind of wanted the opportunity to squeeze this in. A lot of people think Hellbent is terrible, and I, for the most part, agree. Most of the Clara stuff is terrible, and some of the Time Lord stuff I don't like, and one thing I would like to play devil's advocate here is I don't think the Doctor breaking his own rules is a bad thing. It's important that these characters don't just kind of squeeze into the confines of their characters, and they get to kind of have new depths. The Doctor breaking his own rules isn't just for shock, and it shoots the general and then he regenerates, pizzazz and whatnot. I don't think that's it. And having the Doctor lose his memory and essentially not pay any consequences for that action, I think is actually completely untrue. There's one moment when I think the Doctor learns his lesson.
Run like hell.
What?
Run like hell because you always need to. Laugh at everything, because it's always funny.
No, stop it. You're saying goodbye. Don't say goodbye.
Never be cruel, and never be cowardly, and if you ever are, always make amends.
Stop it! Stop! Stop it!
Never eat pears. They're too squishy, and they always make your chin wet. That one is quite important. Write it down.
I didn't mean to do this. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I went too far. I broke all my own rules. I became the hybrid. This is right. I accept it.
Anyway, moving on. After he comes to terms with the loss, the Doctor's finally become the perfect medium. Not strict and serious, not too fun and reckless, but wise and responsible and kind and remarkable. Everything I love in the Doctor, all building up in this incredible speech in his penultimate episode, verbalizing all the lessons the Doctor's learned about life and himself, solidifying Capaldi as my favorite Doctor in Doctor Who.
Winning? Is that what you think it's about? I'm not trying to win. I'm not doing this because I want to beat someone, or because I hate someone, or because I want to blame someone. It's not because it's fun. God knows it's not because it's easy. It's not even because it works, because it hardly ever does. I do what I do because it's right, because it's decent. And above all, It's kind. It's just that. Just kind. If I run away today, good people will die. If I stand and fight, some of them might live. Maybe not many, maybe not for long. Hey, you know, maybe there's no point in any of this at all. But it's the best I can do. So I'm going to do it. And I will stand here doing it till it kills me. You're going to die too. Someday. What would that be if you thought about it? What would you die for? Who I am. It's where I stand, where I stand. It's where I fall.
It's crazy how a soundtrack can become completely detached from its source media and still be some of the best music on Spotify. It's the Doctor Who soundtrack, and it's good. Very good example of a score that is both diverse and universal, both high sky in scale and down low and personable, all the while keeping its staple Doctor Who sci-fi iconography. Music is probably the most vivid art form out there, with film playing second fiddle. Even though film has moving pictures and stuff, and all you get with music is an MP3 file, music is a more versatile media. With film, you're trapped within the characters of your story and the plot and all that stuff. With music, all you get is a sound, and it is infinitely more powerful because of its flexibility. So now I gotta talk about Murray Gold. This man scored my childhood. I go as far as to say that Murray Gold is one of the most important components of Doctor Who. It's fascinating to look at it in that regard, because he's been on the show the longest, starting at the end of the revival in 2005, all the way to Series 10 in 2017. It's probably helped with getting into new production teams, like with Series 4 to 5 and 7 to 8. Even though we had all new people taking over, those familiar Murray Gold tracks still provided company. I mean, seriously, can you imagine these scenes without Murray Gold's music? Oh, yeah. Jokes aside, without Murray Gold, we would have never got masterpieces like Vale de Shem, The Shepherd's Boy, Fornox, All the Strange Creatures, The Song of Freedom, The Long Song, The Majestic Tale, This is Gallifrey, The Life and Death of Amy Pond, Words Win Wars, A Good Man, not to mention every single Doctor Who title sequence of the revival, including that amazing 2005 version. But the real masterpiece here, it's gotta be Wolf's Wiggle. It's the best one, definitely. His music is loud, orchestraic, and it's so appropriate for a show like Doctor Who, with tons of lore and build-up to transform the narrative into a sci-fi epic with badass moments left and right, and with Murray Gold's sick-as-hell music to provide accompaniment to these moments, and elevating them to the type of scene that plasters a huge grin on your face every time you watch it. There's something otherworldly into his music. It changes the tide of a scene at a moment's notice. It gives you confidence when things get triumphant. It makes you cry when things get sad. It makes things scary when things get dark. All fitting the Doctor Who genre. Which is no genre. Well, it's a sci-fi, but no strong definitive theme, I guess. And Murray Gold's music fits like a final puzzle piece in the amazing production of Doctor Who. Jeez. Guys, it's time to talk about the Chibnall Era. First, I gotta start off saying this. I've only seen 3 episodes. The first 3 episodes. But I've watched many videos on the series, so I think I can picture the kind of show that Chibnall Era is. A bad show. But if you want to be technical, yes, I've only seen 3. So you may be asking, why am I including this chapter? Well, because I want to be thorough. That includes the bad. If it helps, I can recommend taking everything I say with the most massive grain of salt. And again, you may be wondering why I don't just watch the episodes. They're on HBO Max, why not just binge them for research purposes? Well, I don't want to torture myself, is pretty much the answer to that question. The reason I'm criticizing the series is because I hope somehow these criticisms make their way to the BBC and Chris Chibnall's desk, so that maybe in some alternative universe, Doctor Who will be watchable again. I would love to see a really good season with Jodie Whittaker. As fans of a show, it's important that we recognize the flaws in a show. Constructive criticism, okay? By definition. Hold your comments, alright? I know how you work, internet. We got all our prefaces out of the way. Without further ado, here are all of my problems with Series 11 and 12, the Chibnall Era. It sucks. Like, it fails in pretty much every way. Well, not every way. Chris Chibnall knows how to lay down a basic blueprint of a story and put characters in it. Unfortunately, that's something you learn in 4th grade, so I gotta be honest, that's where all my compliments begin and end. Making a story is easy. Making a good story is hard. And I gotta be honest, Chris Chibnall, not the best writer out there. He fails horribly at Doctor Who's greatest asset, subtext. Chris Chibnall cannot allow any sort of speculation or dot connecting on the viewer's side. Let me spell this out for you, Chrissy boy over there. The audience is not stupid. We can infer, we have brains, we can figure out things about the story for ourselves. You don't have to explain everything. Nonverbal storytelling is a huge asset in writing. It feels as though as soon as a mystery pops up, the Doctor has some explanation for it, and at a certain point, I'm getting an earache. The writing is really making it hard for me to admire Jodie's performance. And when the story tries to be a little mysterious and vague, it feels pretentious. And that's a true nightmare for a writer. Show, don't tell, bud. Most of my character problems lie in the amount of depth these characters actually have. Not a lot. Most exemplified by the supporting cast of singular episodes, but it's a fatal wound when looking at the companions we're supposed to relate to. These companions' motivations for, like, anything they do are non-existent. It didn't happen. It's a tragedy, especially these two. They're like, not even people, they barely qualify. It's particularly egregious with Ryan. In the first 2 episodes, there are 3 made-up character aspects of this character that never show up again. Chris, buddy, where is the consistency here? The man has a YouTube channel for one shitty twist at the end of the first episode that his mom was the woman that the video was about. He has dyspraxia, which pretty much never comes around in a big way after the Ghost Monument. This is not a character aspect, it's a loophole to create unnecessary tension. Well, I don't know about tension. Does this qualify as tension? No? So if it's not tension, then what? Am I supposed to pity Ryan because of this trial he has to face? Are you trying to be all-inclusive? I don't get it, Chris. What kind of psychopath writes characters like this? Okay. I'm sorry I called you a psychopath, Christopher Chibnall. I'll never say it again. And the final magical character aspect of Ryan is that he is good with guns out of nowhere because Call of Duty. This never comes up again. Thank you, Chris. So I've watched 3 episodes of Christopher's brand spanking Doctor Who series, as you already know. I did not like the episodes I watched. That is why I did not watch the 4th. Chris really fails to make a solid structure to his episodes. Or maybe he does, he just fails at making it interesting. And also fails at making me take these characters seriously. I think what he does is he just overcomplicates his writing. I wonder if it's because it's Doctor Who, he just has to always have the Doctor's mouth running, which isn't true. For that reason, the whole pace of these episodes is thrown by the wayside because the script is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. The enemies and threats are so uninspired, particularly in Series 11. I've heard Series 12 is better, and I'm sure, just haven't seen it. I'm going off of public opinion, okay? Right hand of God. Don't worry, I'm well educated in the Doctor Who circle. Probably the most ridiculous thing that happened was the Timeless Child, which not only ruined Series 12, but the rest of the show's canon too. It's not even really canon, that's the problem. Although it is infuriating that all of this is basically rewrote, not even mentioning the fact that they destroyed Gallifrey again in the Series 12 pilot. It's about plot contrivances and theme holes. Beware made a great video explaining why the Timeless Child pretty much ruined everything. You should go give that a watch. Link in the description. But yeah, it's really fucked up everything. And Chris, I get it, man. Writing for Doctor Who is hard. But you fucked up and I can criticize you for it. So that maybe you'll do a better job next time. It looks fine, it's just not Doctor Who. Although I wish there were more colors. Doctor Who should pop. Okay, these performances are heavily disadvantaged by the scripts, so rest in peace these actors, and yes, that does include Jodie Whittaker. But some deliveries make me not so sure. Tosin Cole, buddy, listen. Everything this guy says comes out as an awkward delivery. I don't know if that's just how he plays the character, but he looks like he feels so out of place everywhere he goes, it makes me uncomfortable. Many of these performances are just hammed up to a ridiculous degree, like this guy from Rags in the UK. I'm assuming that's directing, and speaking of directing, I cannot wrap my head around this directing. In fact, I can't wrap my head around anything that happened in the development stage of the show. So first we had this. And now we have this. Moving on. Man, this is it. How do I sum up everything that makes Doctor Who a definitive part of my character? Doctor Who has been a part of me for as long as I can remember. I mean, the most fuzzy memory I have is of me at about 6 or 7 watching the Doctor sit down on a bus seat and wish Michelle Ryan Happy Easter. Back then, the show immediately captured my imagination, as I'm sure it did for most other kids. Ever since then, I've been an unconditional fan. I've watched religiously with my parents. It was a definitive part of my life, legitimately. I've grown up with the show, and even today it still amazes me. Those childhood memories of watching the show every Saturday night, eagerly awaiting each episode, finally resurfaced. Having Doctor Who merchandise all over my room, writing fanfictions about the show, and no, not the romantic kind of fanfic, just writing my own stories based on the show. I was 8, man, give me a break. I had a little notepad. I would predict how life was on Gallifrey for the Doctor as a kid. I remember playing out episodes in my imagination and dancing around my room in my tweed jacket and clip-on bow tie since I didn't know how to actually tie one. I treasure such memories extremely fondly. The Doctor was my hero, and I deeply loved and still love the show with all my heart. There's a certain level of purity to it. Some perfect idea of how to live. I mean, I followed the show religiously. I probably gave everyone that came within 5 feet of me earaches from how integral it was to my life. I couldn't wait to see the Doctor show all the bad aliens who's boss. The magic, the adventures, and more specifically the characters held a place in my heart. The Doctor, first and foremost, of course. Not to mention all the lessons it taught me growing up. In fact, I owe a lot to Doctor Who, to what I know about the world. To never be cruel or cowardly, to help anyone no matter what, without hope, without witness, without reward. These are lessons that actually mean something, not just anthems he calls upon when it's time to do the right thing. Doing the right thing is not an action, but a lifestyle. To live by the moral book is objectively the right way to live, and Doctor Who showed me how to live the right way the best way. God, I sound like Rose Tyler.
The Doctor showed me a better way of living your life.
What I mean is that the Doctor will always try to do the right thing, and there's a nobility to it that I've always admired and tried to replicate because it is objectively good. Of course, sometimes you can't always make the right choice or the good choice.
Sometimes the only choices you have are bad ones. But you still have to choose.
But those moments are tests, challenges to overcome. And the Doctor may break a few times, but the moral of the story is that he never gives up. That tells me that even if I break, never give up on trying to be a good person. And these anthems of goodness sure as hell meant something to me all those years ago, and especially now. Who the Doctor is speaks a lot about who I want to be in this world, and how everyone should strive to be nice, helpful, passionate, sincere, loyal, emotional, wise, and real. It's the Doctor who taught that to me. It provided fun entertainment every week in my childhood, and taught me important life lessons in my adolescence. But it's far more complicated than that. Because as Sarah Jane put it,
The universe has to move forward. Pain and loss, they define us as much as happiness or love. Whether it's a world or a relationship, everything has its time, and everything ends.
Doctor Who exhibits all these aspects of life elegantly and sincerely with heart and emotion and excitement and passion and love, touching the hearts of millions of other people like me. Doctor Who has always used the facade of subtext to hide a more complex story within, and there's subtext right in its description. Doctor Who is not a sci-fi, but a parallel to life. Everything about life, what makes it great, what makes it horrible, what makes it scary and sad and confusing, but above all else, what makes it a spectacle. There are worlds out there dripping with adventure, but the world just outside your door is just as exciting. Doctor Who strives to inspire everyone out there to be the best person they can be, to take your life and make it amazing. And it's also a metaphor for death, an exciting sci-fi kids show, a religious family program, a comedy, a horror, a soap opera, and above all else, a drama. Life, but with the dull bits cut out. That's Doctor Who, and why it is the best show on TV. And that concludes it. The video essay is complete. I hope you've all enjoyed what I've had to say about Doctor Who. Like I've said, the show means a lot to me, perhaps even more than I said in that last segment. I'm very critical and protective of the show, which is why it pains me that we have the garbage that we have now. Perhaps one day, Doctor Who will return and inspire a whole new generation of me's, because if the world forgot about this show, that would be devastating. I know that when I eventually have kids, I'm going to show them the show. It changed me for the better, and I want them to experience that at any cost. I hope I didn't piss anyone off with my opinions. I know the whole online debate scene on YouTube is pretty much an absolute travesty. I really tried to not let my bias carry the essay. I pulled a lot of examples. I tried as much as I could to be as objective as possible and not let my beating heart of nostalgia carry my opinions. If anyone would like to share their thoughts on Doctor Who, I would be more than happy to have a discussion in the comment section below. There's literally nothing I love more than talking about Doctor Who. Seriously. Subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. I'm probably going to hop into a brand new video essay right now. Thinking of either doing Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, or maybe another Doctor Who one. Who knows? I doubt they'll all be 90 minutes like this one, but I don't know. I have a few more things to say. And let's be for real. If you like Doctor Who, you're probably in the right place. Thank you all for watching. This video essay took a hell of a long time to make. We're talking like months and months here. I'm so happy it's finally complete. You can't know how much this means to me, seriously. I'm off script now. Thank you for watching. I love Doctor Who more than anything in my life. This video essay was my passion project. I'm so happy with how it turned out. This is post-editing, of course. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna stop now. Thank you. That's it. Bye, guys.